told, people wondered if they were the missing link between us and the apes.
If we go back to the beginning of the 20th century, Neanderthals were seen as sort of ape-like creatures.
But since then, hundreds of fossil finds have revealed their physical similarities to us.
After the 70s, there was a so-called rehabilitation of the Neanderthals, so we tend to see them in a more human way.
But did they think and act like us? Today, the remains of a young boy who died 100,000 years ago are helping researchers penetrate the mysteries of the Neanderthal mind. The Meuse Valley in Belgium. It was caves and rock shelters here that gave up the very first Neanderthal fossils 150 years ago. Today, they are revealing deeper secrets of the Neanderthal world. For over 20 years, Michel Toussaint and Dominique Bonjean have been excavating a cave called Skladina. One millimeter at a time, they've been sifting through the debris that once filled the cave. Their painstaking work paid off.
I've had the chance to be present when one of my students have discovered the Neanderthal child. And when we have come there and see that this piece, well, we were so surprised, we couldn't believe.
What they uncovered was the jawbone of a young boy, 100,000 years old. Nearby, they found more fragments and teeth, until they had almost a complete mouth. Since then, they've been trying to reconstruct the life of the boy from Skladina. They know the woodlands and caves of the Meuse Valley were his home. He probably lived here with his extended family. Already, he would have been learning from his father the skills to become a hunter. But what else can we infer about his way of life? His bones are full of clues, and new techniques are allowing scientists to decipher them. Michel is taking a piece of the jaw to one of the few places in the world where the tests he needs can be done. The Max Planck Institute in Leipzig, Germany, is one of the world's foremost centers for human evolutionary studies. Here, the jawbone of the child from Skladina is put through a high-powered CT scan. This allows researchers to peer into the internal structure of the teeth and bone.
So this is the mandible that was scanned yesterday, the Skladina mandible. And we have built up what we call a surface model, which is basically a virtual representation of the mandible in a computer. We can separate all the teeth from the bone in the specimen. The features that we can explore show us how Neanderthal are similar to us in many aspects, but also how they are different.
The teeth of children are among the most prized of all archaeological finds, because only they can tell us how fast those children were growing up.
If we look at the pattern of eruption of the teeth, the Skladina child, by modern standards, should be about 11 or 12 years old. The second molar is almost completely erupted. But when we look at the internal structures of the enamel and dentine, it has been shown that it's in fact much younger. We know that this child died around 8 years old.
Although the boy from Skladina would have looked like us, he probably grew up much more quickly. That means he had much less time for brain development and learning. But is it safe to assume the Neanderthals were less intelligent than we are? The crucial evidence comes from skulls. Endocasts, impressions taken from the inside of Neanderthal skulls, have revealed brains with many similarities to ours.
When we look at the Neanderthal endocast, we find a frontal lobe that we can't really differentiate from modern Homo sapiens. The Broca's caps that have to do with the motor control, motor aspects of speech are thoroughly human in terms of their form.
So if the front of the Neanderthal brain is similar to ours, what about the rest of it? Today, scientists like Katarina Havarti are trying to measure fossil skulls with new precision. She uses a special instrument to digitize the skulls and create perfect three-dimensional images.
We've known for a long time that Neanderthals look different from modern humans ever since they were first discovered and described. But the question then becomes, what does this difference actually mean?
This is a digitized 3D image of our own skull, with its characteristic high dome. By contrast, the Neanderthal skull is low and elongated, possibly indicating a different brain shape. The parts of the Neanderthal brain, called the parietal and temporal lobes, may have been slightly smaller. That small difference could have had a large impact on their mental ability.
There are regions of the parietal lobes and the temporal lobes that are very important in cognition, particularly in terms of language, in memory, in remembering spatial locations.
The reduced size of those regions of Neanderthal brains might be a sign of limited thinking powers. But the boy from Skladina's jawbone has more to tell us about other limitations. Back at the Max Planck Institute, Mike Richards is delving even deeper into the microstructure of the bone to find out about his diet. The food we eat leaves a chemical signature in our bodies. These signatures are incorporated into the protein of our bones.
So what we do is get the bone and we take that protein out and measure those signatures. We can work backwards and say this is the food that this human ate over their lifetime.
He's discovering that Neanderthals were almost exclusively meat eaters, although there were many fruits, berries, and edible roots in their environment.
We don't see any evidence that plant protein was at all important in their diet. And it doesn't look like they had marine food at all. They were hunting large herbivores like bison or reindeer and things like that.
They were carnivores, with a diet closer to that of a predator, like a wolf, than a human. And they showed few signs of change, no matter where they lived.
So far, we've measured the type specimen from Germany, the Neanderthals from Skladina, Neanderthals from France and Croatia over about 100,000 years. And in every case, in all these different environments, the Neanderthals do the same thing.
So the bones of the boy from Skladina and his people are revealing important clues to Neanderthal behavior. They did one thing, hunting large game, and they just kept on doing it. For hundreds of thousands of years. Their technology tells a similar story.
Neanderthal technology is quick and dirty. It's simple. There's very few tools that Neanderthals made that one can't copy in a few seconds or even minutes.
Although they hunted large animals, they didn't have throwing spears or arrows.
None of the stone tools that the Neanderthals made are of the size and shape sufficient to be a projectile point. They're all too big, which suggests they're either knives or the tips of thrusting spears.
That meant Neanderthal hunters had to get close to their prey to kill them, which made hunting a risky business. Most Neanderthal male skeletons have multiple fractures. Neanderthal lives were tough and they were short. Their skeletons tell us that very few lived beyond the age of 30. But as a species, the Neanderthals were long-lived. They lasted for almost 400,000 years. That's twice as long as we have. But one day, their time on Earth would come to an end. By 25,000 years ago, they vanish from the fossil record. So what happened? To find out, we have to return to Africa. The Great Rift Valley, the stage on which so much of human evolution has played out. It was here, millions of years ago, that nature began its grand experiment with creatures like Lucy, who walked upright. It was here, just over 1 million years ago, that Turkana Boy and his kind, with their bigger brains and bodies, formed the first hunter-gatherer societies. And it was here, about 200,000 years ago, that the skulls of a new species start to be found. The last human to evolve, Homo sapiens. They are still not completely us. Their brow ridges are a little heavier, their faces a little bigger, and their technology is still simple.
If you have stone tools made by Neanderthals and stone tools made by Homo sapiens, and they're identical, you can't tell which one made the stone tools because they're making the same kinds of tools.
So what changed? What made us into the versatile beings we are today? All the evidence points to climate upheaval.
We enter one of the longest, coldest glacial stages on record.
Around 200,000 years ago, vast ice sheets descend. In Africa, mega droughts turn much of the continent into a desert.
And so basically you've got this double whammy of climatic challenges slamming the African population, and the people dwindle.
Geneticist Spencer Wells believes that ancient population crashes have left a footprint in our genes. It's called the bottleneck effect.
Humans, although on the surface we seem to be so different from each other, actually have remarkably little genetic diversity. We're 99.9% identical. You look at other apes like chimps or gorillas or orangutans, they have between 4 and 10 times as much diversity at the DNA level.
The lack of diversity in human DNA is a clue to a crisis that may have wiped out whole populations.
The reason that we have so little diversity at the genetic level is because we lost it at some point. Imagine that this bottle of jelly beans is the initial population. You've got so much diversity in here. What happens during a bottleneck? When you go through the bottleneck, only a few of the lineages survive. So that's the drop in population size right there. Everyone alive today is a descendant of these individuals, and you can see that we're missing many of the colors that you see in the initial population. That's how a bottleneck works. And everybody alive today is a descendant of that small number of individuals who made it through the bottleneck.
Ancient climate data shows that around 140,000 years ago, most of tropical Africa became uninhabitable. Our ancestors were forced to seek refuge on coasts and highlands.
It looks like 4 to 6 potential locations in Africa that would still be supportive of hunter-gatherer populations.
Despite the refuges, there is evidence our ancestors were pushed to the brink of extinction.
The genetic record shows us that all modern humans are descended from a small population of approximately 600 breeding individuals.
There's disagreement about the numbers